Old Hickory. It was illegal to beat your wife with a dowel bigger around than your thumb, the rule of thumb. For the kids, most people settle for a hickory switch. It's just a tough, reliable, high quality wood. He put out a wanted poster on an escaped slave one time. I don't know what would motivate any slave in those days to rather take their chances with the engines than working at an orphanage. Gotta get away from this orphanage. Gotta get away from this house full of kids. Yeah, I don't think this particular slave was making a desperate gamble for freedom. I think he was probably trying to escape the noose. Training a dog, especially a puppy, they don't respond very well to like impact. The instinct of the mother bitch is to snarl and snap and scare the ever living crap out of them. That's why they make collars that emulate the mother's teeth. Works better than choking them. A young child, they get pretty ambitious. It's one thing to say, wait till your father gets home, and they're like afraid. If you discipline them at the moment of the infraction, it creates a psychological association with the punishment and the undesirable behavior. You could take a hickory switch and really lay into a little kid, and they still won't know what they're being punished for by the time daddy gets home. Like, if you even have the presence of mind to tell them why, to remind them why they're being punished at the time of the punishment, they still aren't cognating, like living out that moment in their mind at the time of the punishment. Startle them, embarrass them, give them a little sting right at that moment, because they didn't just outlaw spankings because some parents just get too carried away. They also outlawed them. They used those psychos to outlaw it because they were building a massive privatized prison industry and a mental health racket. Now, if your kids aren't lucky enough to learn discipline elsewhere, they'll learn it in prison, or they'll just be medicated until it doesn't matter what they want to do. Screamed out of bed by Haitians for years until they learn how to act, because the legislature just can't figure out how to budget our correctional facilities. How can we afford to lock everybody up and pay the taxes? Where are we going to get the money to lock all the taxpayers up? United Nations like, we'll have to lend you the money. The Islamic States of America. Yeah, you have to spank your kids when they're young. Hopefully not more than once or twice, because they don't know what no means. You tell them no, and then next thing you know, they're telling you no, and that's when it's time to teach them how that works. The nanny state telling you how to raise your kids because they eventually want to adopt them, whether you like it or not, is an apparatus of the colonial fascist profiteer prison industry. Americans are not as sick as they make us out to be. It's just that when you subsidize a for-profit mental health racket, they can fund their campaigns on pushing, but it's actually encapsulated toxic waste that we pay the third world to take from us, and they sell back to us out of our taxes, whether we voted for it or not. You see, when you sell medicine for profit as opposed to cure, as opposed to treat, so if you make everybody sick, you can treat them indefinitely. You can only cure them once. So medicines that actually work are not worth quite as much as, Sigmund Freud was a raging homosexual, cocaine distributor and fugitive in exile. And he designed the whole modern psychotherapeutic model. Prozac is a fluoride pill. Fluoride is a toxic waste byproduct of the Luftwaffe that made the Jews stupid enough to participate in their own genocide. They've been putting it in our water for 50, 60 years, and since the late 80s, Prozac is the miracle drug of the 90s because they were dumping so much of it in the water, it was showing up on EPA analyses. The Privacy Act you can't investigate legally. Oh yeah, it wasn't the doctor, it was the patient. They told the insurance company the patient stole it and threw it in the water, or sold it because it worked so good. But you can't say anything because of Privacy Act. You got to be, sneaky about it. Don't say anything to his face, so that way he has no opportunity to know what he's accused of, let alone solve the crime. But it should be enough to just know how this works. Now, it doesn't matter if you're crazy, because you can't fund a broadcast mass media zombie apocalypse election campaign on healthy people. They just change it. It's called Flat Earth. They normalize insanity and criminalize normalcy. We have to teach the kids the proper way to administer a spanking, so that they might not be like, "Look, Dad, you're doing it wrong," but the other ones will know. There'll be a consensus. But damn well, a lot of them eventually, it's like, "Look, stupid. This is how you do it. You identify the problem behavior. What are you doing?" And there'll be times when, "Well, this is what you told me to do." They just don't understand, and then it's not a disciplinary issue. And there's other times when you caught them red-handed, and that is a life lesson. That's the learning time, the golden hour. Strike while the iron's hot. But you're not, injury is not discipline. You're not trying to leave a mark. You're not trying to punish them. You're trying to train them. This is for their own good. The French aren't going to like that idea. Protestants hate everything. See, when the majority can't be relied upon to see to their own best interest, it's a losing bet. It's better to guarantee they have no idea what's going on, so you can take care of them. The nanny state is far more insidious than the average normal person is likely to consider. Imagine they use the state to take your children's well-being out of your hands so they can coddle them until they give them a reason to take ownership. 30 years of school shootings, they want to take our guns. Well, this goes back to the people responsible enough making outlaws out of people that are just know better, because while the majority can't be relied upon, that could be remedied. If the teachers weren't communists, the legislature wouldn't have the excuse to gut education. But if they weren't gutting education, there wouldn't be so many communist teachers. It won't do any good to teach parents a class on how to spank your kids, because nobody will go. These people have jobs. But the kids will be very interested. The startling, the embarrassment is worth more than any pain you can inflict. You catch them in the act, and it just creates, like I said, an association between that behavior and unwanted experience. This isn't necessarily common sense. There is an element of training. Classical conditioning was established in a controlled setting only within the past century. But it's called classical conditioning because the Greeks established the Lyceum, the predecessor to the modern university, the gymnasium, the place where you go to train. If your motive for discipline is anger, you're the one who lacks discipline. mfrodeo.blogspot.com. First, do no harm, or you belong in a nut house.